All right, welcome back everybody. So as mentioned, today we'll be working on a Rook. So jumping into Blender, first thing I'm going to do is just select everything and delete. And the next thing I'd like to do is to do a quick sketch of a Rook. So I'm going to take out my paper. I'll get you guys some paper after this as well. And I'm just going to do a really quick sketch. So obviously the Rook has a distinctive feature of it. The top part has crenulations, which are reminiscent of like a tower for a castle. Other than that, it does more or less just look like the rest of the chess pieces. I like to give it sort of a slightly flared bottom and a pedestal or some sort for it to sit on. Okay, so I'm going to open up my camera app now. Camera, there it is. And we'll just take a quick picture of that. And in order to get that into Blender, you can go into your pictures folder under camera roll, and it should be the last picture in the list. Okay, so I'm going to jump into my front view by pushing numpad 1, and I'll just bring this picture in. So just dragging it from my file browser into here, G to move it down so that it's aligned with the bottom of it should be on that red line, and the center should be along that blue line. All right, so now we have our reference inside of Blender. We're going to start to create just one side because it's a symmetrical shape, right? So we're going to create one side. And as for these crenulations at the top, we're not going to create those. We're just going to have a flat thing up the top here, okay? So watch what I do there. We'll start by hitting Shift A, and then we're going to go to Mesh, Single Vert, Add Single Vert. All right. So that's created just a vertice right down at the bottom here. The next step, once we've got that single vert, is we're going to hit E, and this allows us to extrude a new vertice away from that first one, okay? I'm going to push X to lock that to this X axis and just move it underneath this point here, okay? So we've got one edge between two vertices now. If I push E again, I can create the next point. For this one, I'm going to go straight up, so I'm pushing Z and just creating something like this. You can see that it doesn't actually follow my drawing very closely, but that's okay. I know that I want this to have a flat base, so that's fine. This next part, I can push E once again and just move this to this corner here. And this is where I will start to follow the drawing a little bit more closely. I'll push E again, go up to this point, and now I'm going to try and create this little bit of a stepped look that I've got here. So E, 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 and I'm just going to come up to here and then finish by closing my shape by bringing this last bit right to the center. Wonderful. So now that we have our contour, so we've got this single line going around our entire rook, excluding these crenulations. So the next step, we're going to go back to object mode. You can do that by pushing tab. You can see it's gone back to object mode. We're going to find our modifiers, which is this little spanner on the side. So looking for the little blue spanner, we'll click on that. We're going to add a screw modifier. So you can click add modifier and then type screw, or you can find it under generate and then screw. And you can see when we add this, now we've got a 3D model. So that's a nice easy way of making that 3D model. We're going to add a couple more modifiers. We're going to add a weld modifier, so generate weld. This one, all it's really doing is it's taking the points at the very top and the very bottom. I can see those here. So all of the points at the very top and the very bottom, and it's welding them together, okay? So one interesting thing to note, you can see if I zoom in really close, I've actually got a little hole in the top, right? So the way to fix that is I just need to move this point at the center here. I need to move it so it's exactly on that blue line, okay? And the way to do that, well, one of the easiest ways is to turn on snapping, which is this little magnet at the top, and then I can make my snapping mode be grid-based, and then push G, X, and then snap it to that blue line. So you can see that single vertex is now directly in the middle there. So now there will not be a hole anymore, okay? When it comes to 3D printing, we want to make sure everything is watertight. And so having these holes can be a big problem. Okay, so we've added a screw modifier and a weld modifier. The final one we're going to add is a subdivision surface modifier. And you can see that this actually starts to round out our shape. I'm going to set the level viewports to 3. All right, so we now have a smooth looking rook, which is good, but it's not actually getting the nice hard corners that I'd like. So we can look over here. I'm going to turn on X-ray mode by pushing Alt Z, or you can turn it on over here if you'd like. And you can see that based on my artwork, these corners are supposed to be quite sharp, like angles, but at the moment they're kind of round, okay? If I want those to be hard angles again, I can do that by adding some more vertices. If I push Control R, you can see this will allow me to drop a vertex anywhere on an existing edge. So I'm going to put one over here, and if I hit Shift V, this will allow me to slide that vertex along an existing edge as well. So I'm going to turn off snap because that's going to get in the way. The closer I put this to the corner, the sharper it's going to look, okay? So we'll do this here as well. So that was once again Control R and then Shift V. So Control R, Shift V. And this is just making my model look a lot sharper. You'll see after I've done this to all of these corners, it's going to look a lot more like what I had planned. You don't have to do this to all of your corners. Sometimes you'll actually want the line to be smoothed. For example, down here on my artwork, you can see this is actually looking like it's quite round in the artwork. So having a combination of smooth and hard corners is actually quite a good thing. Maybe I'll have these ones. This one here can be a sharp one, and then this one here can be rounded, and then down here it can be sharp again. Okay, so that looks quite nice. Maybe I'll do a sharp one here, but then this part here can be rounded. And you can also grab any of these points if you want to change the look. You can grab these by pushing G and moving them around. And you can see how that makes this nice curved shape here. Or I could add another vertex along this by pushing Control R and then push G and use that to give this a bit more curvature down here as well. Just play around, see how moving it around changes the look. I quite like that. We're getting this almost S shape appearing. It's quite good. Okay, so take a look at your model. Pretty happy with that.
Alright, so the last thing we're going to do to this rook is to add some crenulations to the top, just like in our reference. These little spiky bits that make it look like a castle tower. And in order to do that, we're going to apply the modifiers down the side here. So to demonstrate what I mean by that, if we just go into edit mode currently, you'll see that we just have this single line coming down the side, and this is responsible for creating the entire shape. And this is great. At any point, if I want to alter the shape, I can grab these points and I can easily move these around to make large changes to this model. But in order to add these spikes, I'm going to need even more control than this. Okay, so we're going to come over to these modifiers, and one by one, I'm going to go through and apply them. We need to be in object mode to do this. So coming over to the screw modifier, you can see I've got this little arrow on the side, just to the right here. If I click on that, there's an option here called apply. So if I choose that and go into edit mode once again by pushing tab, you can see I now have the ability to select points anywhere on this model, not just on the side like before. So this is going to give us a lot more control. I will just point out, however, that If I ever wanted to go back and make those changes, I can't do that now. Um, those large changes like I had when I had that screw modifier. So actually what I've done here is I have broken my non-destructive workflow by applying that screw modifier. So what I'm going to do is actually undo back to before I applied it, and I'm going to show you a way that we can preserve this level of control so that if we ever want to come back to this point, we can easily do so. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here where it says collection, and I'll just rename this Rook underscore working. So this is like a construction level of the Rook that we should be able to come back to if we need to. What I'll also do is just right click this, and I'm going to say duplicate collection, and this duplicate I'm going to rename to Rook finishing. Okay, you can see I've got these tick boxes here. So what I'll do is I'll untick the tick box for the working one, and there I have it. It's just preserved as it was with all of the modifiers still on it. And if I ever want to come back to that version, I can do so quite easily. I'm also going to make sure I save. So in this case, I'm going to save as, and you can see I've already got this name here. So Rook underscore tutorial underscore version 2. So in this case, I'm going to increment the save and call it version 3. And we'll just click save as. The reason I like to incrementally save is that if I ever have a file that gets corrupted, or I've deleted something and I've accidentally saved over it, I can always roll back to a previous version to recover at least some of what I've got here. Right, so now we will actually apply that screw modifier. So just coming over here once again, I'm going to click here and go apply. And you can see I've got this level of control. Just to demonstrate, if I ever wanted to go back to this other one, I can just untick this one, tick this one back on, and then I do have a version that is back at this point in time. All right, so along with that, we're actually going to also apply this weld modifier, and I'll explain why. So currently, if I choose a vertex in the middle, you can see I can actually move that vertex, but in reality, there are actually 16 vertices here, all overlapping the same point in space. So after applying this weld modifier, just jumping back into object mode and applying this, if I come in and check it out now, you can see that I only have one vertex here, and that's going to make it a lot tidier. It's also going to create a watertight mesh, which is what we need for 3D printing. Alright, as for the subdivision surface modifier, I'm actually going to leave this as is. It's not going to be applied for now. And the reason for that is that if I apply this, and check out the mesh now, you can see I've just got far too much detail. If I actually want to make any changes to this, it's going to be really difficult. I could, drag selections and move bits around like this, but it's really not going to be very easy at this point. So let's undo back before I applied that, and you can see at this level, I have the ability to go in and, for example, select all of these faces here, and I could use something like the extrude, which is E on the keyboard. So this is this is just a basic extrusion, and you can see this is essentially how we're going to go about creating these crenulations. Now these ones are obviously too thin, so let's go ahead and maybe change the width a little bit. I've just held Alt here. I've pushed 2 on my keyboard, choose edge mode, and holding Alt, I'm just clicking on one of these edges, and you can see that selects the entire loop. So this is really handy. With this loop selected, I'm just going to push S and scale in so that I'm getting roughly, almost a square sized thickness for these crenulations. Okay, if I go through and select these again, so just holding Shift, left clicking to select these, I'm in number 3 or face mode currently, selecting these, and I can push E and just moving straight up like this. Alright, so that's actually pretty good. It kind of looks a bit strange though, doesn't it? We've got these rounded shapes instead of the square shapes that I was kind of expecting for this based on my reference. Now, this is actually easy to fix. We could do something similar to what we did when we were creating these, Control R and then Shift V to slide these edges and make these harder edged. But last week I mentioned that we'd take a look at the crease tool this week, and so this is actually a really good point to do that. With these faces still selected, I'm going to go to Edge, and then I'm going to find edge crease. The hotkey for that is Shift E. Now watch what happens if I slide my mouse to the right. So I'm just moving it to the right, and you can see that now these edges have become hard, right? So that's pretty much what I want. Still looking a bit rounded in places. So what I might do is hit Control plus, and this is going to select, this is going to grow the selection. So I had the tops selected, and by growing that selection, I'm now selecting all of the adjacent faces to those top faces. So let's once again hit Shift E, or crease edge, and you can see now I have some really nice crenulations. I'm just going back into object mode and taking a look, and you can see I actually have a little bit of weird pinching happening here. And the reason for that is I'm using a combination of creases and this method I showed you earlier where we have edges that are nice and close. So these methods don't necessarily play nicely together. What I can do is just select this edge loop here and push delete. And in this case, I'm going to choose dissolve edges. Let's take a look at that now. You can see that's looking a whole lot better. We might want to also have hard edges for these edges on the outside. So I can go through and select these, just the ones between. I know I want that to be sort of a hard edge as well. So Shift E, moving it all the way to the right, and there we have it. Got a pretty nice looking rook there. Now I'm pretty happy with this rook, but there are a couple of little bits that I can show you that could improve this, and just some little tidbits, extras for experts we'll call them. So if we come in here and look at these edge creases we've got, what we can do is we can actually make these so they're not fully creased, right? So I'm just going to demonstrate that. I can hold Alt with my face selection mode and just click like this to select all of these creased bits. Or I suppose what we could also do is just select all of these ones and hit Control plus again. I also need these ones here, so maybe we'll just hold Alt Shift, and there we go. Just clicking to choose all of these things here. Now, currently I've got these creases turned up all the way to the maximum, but if I hit Shift E once again, you can see I can actually drag it back just a little bit. So if I go all the way to the left, it will be completely uncreased, it'll be smooth. And if I go all the way to the right, it'll be completely hard edges. But if I find somewhere in the middle, I can have, slightly rounded, which kind of matches the aesthetic of everything down here. And you can see how we actually have down here this option called edge crease. We can click on that, and there's a setting here which we can drag. So all the way to the right, factor of 1, it's completely hard edges. All the way to the left, factor of -1 is smooth. And then finding values in between, we can choose something that's just right. So I like that. That's a nice smoothness to me. Okay. The last thing I want to show is that, well, I probably have to jump back to my working version to show this, but I wanted to show you that if you want a different number of crenulations, so I think I've got 8 in my one. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, yeah, something like 8. But if you want a different number of those, before applying the screw modifier, there's actually the setting here, steps viewport. And if you change this to a different number, so as you can see, mine is set to 16. So when I apply this modifier, that's the number of edges that are going around this shape. But if we change that to, I don't know, let's go 12 and apply that now, that's an easy way of achieving, like six crenulations going around, if that's what you're after. Anyway, that's pretty much it for today. I'm looking forward to seeing all of the rooks that you guys make. Awesome.